Hello, and thank you for watching. My name is Don Eindhoven, and I am the founder of the Dutch cyber warfare community. You are watching clips recorded from our 22nd Roundtable event held on December 3rd, 2020. We called it the Corona Edition. This is the third speaker out of a set of 10, Brenno de Winter. Brenno de Winter is a Dutch expert in information security and privacy, as well as a lauded speaker. As a former research journalist, he became well known for asking those questions that no politician wants to receive, wielding a Dutch law on governmental transparency to great effect and receiving a number of court cases as a thank you in return. He has written articles for a number of magazines and news sites, but is better known for writing a number of books on information security and translating the titles to English: The Red Hack, Digital Flood, and the Digital Jungle Survival Guide. He is currently the Chief Security and Privacy Operations at the Dutch Ministry of Health, Wellbeing and Sport. We proudly present to you Brenno de Winter.
I think so. Excellent. I'm just trying to share my screen. And if it doesn't work, then in that case, we'll just go and start. Because most people know me, I'll be very short about myself. Hi, I'm Brenno de Winter, and I'm going to talk about the contact tracing app in the Netherlands, the Corona Melder, and how we got to a solution where privacy and security were at an acceptable rate, and some lessons learned and some failures made. We discovered in the Netherlands that there are no contact tracing apps for COVID-19 off the shelf because all the pandemics that we had before didn't have as many cell phones around as we do nowadays. So we had no option but to start for ourselves. At that point, I was still very critical at the whole process. So externally and approached in May to help make Corona Melder happen, and then especially from a privacy and security perspective. What we built is basically a device that does the same that the government will do when you fall ill for any infectious disease. Try to find out who has been in a close proximity of you for a period of more than 15 minutes. And then in Dutch we say 1.5 meters, but what really is interesting is basically the circle up to 3 meters. That's the place where you can still pretty well infect people. That project itself started on April 22nd. I joined at May 22nd, and it was at very early stages very clear that nobody or only few people would use the app if there was no trust in the solution, and if people didn't trust it was secure and privacy friendly. So one of the things we decided immediately was, okay, let's do this as open as we can. So of course, open source, open project, people can join as much as they'd like to, but also designs are open, security research is open to everybody. And basically what we can share, we will share. And basically, I think there's only one document that we can't share because of classification. And furthermore, everything is basically out there. The other thing that was different was, of course, the way we had sourcing. There was a speed. So normally, if within the government, people are buying something that can cost weeks and weeks and weeks, and sometimes even months. And now we had the opportunity to get in touch with the best and the brightest as quickly as possible. And when I was working, to get started, there was a website that was used by one of the Dutch government related to COVID-19. And it had a URL manipulation error. So basically what happened is we had infection radar, and a journalist was able to retrieve all the records with medical data. The website was offline for months before they fixed it. It's it was a big thing, but one of the remarks I made immediately is, how can it be that there hasn't been a pen test? Well, it took the director of information less than 2 minutes to dig up the pen test and said like, okay, here's the pen test. So there was a pen test. And it turns out that in the Netherlands, most companies, when they make a pen test, the only thing they write down is what is wrong, not what they really tested. So I decided to source differently and say like, okay, these are the standards you have to adhere to. These are the tests you have to execute. This is how you have to write it down, and this is how you deliver any findings. For instance, give it the CVSS score, and then of course rate it to the CIA as we decided that it should be. That was immediately a game changer. So we contacted 10 companies, and 6 of them said like, okay, fuck you, we're not going to deal with you. It's way too sensitive, we're not going to help you. So we had only a few companies that decided to help, and some companies found it too political sensitive, which I can understand because it was political sensitive. So we decided to do a penetration test, a source code review, a backend review, and of course a public review, and before the end of the year a bug bounty will be started. So those are the tests that we did. And then we did a second thing. We made a set of rules, and the first rule is privacy is always first. Second rule is security second. Third is accessibility is always there. And fourth and the latter are the ones that deal with the actual functionality of the tool. And this sounds like a marketing story. It isn't. So for instance, when we decided, okay, we need to know if the app is effective, I immediately said like, oh, from a privacy perspective, I don't think you need to do that in the app. So there will be no statistics. And that was the end of the discussion. Another example is a website of the Dutch government always has cookies. Oh, cookies is a way of tracing people, and that's exactly what we promised not to do. So cookies were out. That was a kind of game changer because the Prime Minister's office had a rule, you will always use PIRIC. Well, we didn't. And we said, okay, and we're not going to do it, and that's the end of the story. And they accepted it. So what I learned is that you can do what you want to do and stick to firm rules without, being hindered. We added a bunch of privacy features. I can't call them all out here because I only got 10 minutes. But a couple of the coolest things that we did was there is a law that forbids any abuse of data being processed. So for instance, if the police wants to use the COVID-19 contact tracing app data, it's forbidden for them to do so. I don't know if there is a precedent. I haven't found it. I think it's also the first app that has a right because the law says there will be an app. And I think that's cool. And there is a layer of Apple and Google which is highly criticized, and you can find whatever you want to find for it. But there's one cool feature: the Dutch government is not allowed to touch the data that the layer gets. So we can't ever get, it's also technically very hard to do so, ever get to the signals that the phones received. You can only upload keys and have them published when another government body said like, okay, this guy is really sick, but we at the ministry cannot see what is matching to what. We've created an infrastructure where it's for us technically and legally impossible to get to log files and still have arranged that in case of an attack or whatever, the right authorities have access to the right data, but we as ministry, we don't. Those are a couple of the core features that we added from a privacy perspective. And then there was a big discussion started by the Data Protection Authority of the Netherlands. And they had to go public after one day and say like, yeah, okay, there's a legal discussion, but from a privacy technical perspective, this app is perfect. And unfortunately, they didn't have the humor at the ministry to, make advertisements with the Data Protection Authority say that we are technically perfect. But it was kind of cool because the privacy by design was done in such a way that it all added up. One last feature I want, two features I want to measure. Of course, you need to make your risk assessments. So you make your threat analysis with a Secret Service, etc. But we also did a failure mode effect analysis risk assessment. And that is not common within the Dutch government. So it raised some eyebrows when I started with it. But we did do it, and it's a very simple way of getting a hold of the risks that are out there. And I now have permission to start a new failure mode effect analysis and make that a community effort. So have people join in and, add to the risk table. I don't know of any government project where that has been done before. So that altogether is, in a nutshell, what we built with the Corona Melder from a privacy and security perspective. And the same rules also apply to the new app. And what was also kind of cool, privacy was first, security was second. There would be no launch before we said, okay, we think it's good enough. So there was a 1 month delay because I had some wishes that were not fulfilled yet. And before they were there, we would not launch. Try and find a lot of IT projects in general where security can say like, nah, not good enough. So far so good? Am I still within my time?
You are, yes. In fact, I've assigned you a few questions, and we are getting quite a number. Are you out of your own material, Brenno?
Yeah, there was one thing that I also forgot to say, but I think is important, is that you need to have somebody with the balls that dares to take such a management decision. That was Ron Roosendaal, the CIO. And one of the things that he really did was, I think, exceptional, is that he said like, okay, what is needed we'll do. We'll pay what needs to be paid. If you have success, you can go out and claim it. If there's failure, say that people go to me. So whatever you did, it was for yourself. It was always zero risk. And we've had a couple of incidents with some people making certain mistakes. And he lived up to that. And that was incredibly for the morale. And that's important. Also, if you have ended in firm discussions where people are angry because decisions you made, that at that point there is somebody at the end of the line that says like, no, security and privacy come first, and then your wishes will come.
Excellent. We have some questions from the audience, and I'll do the first one that was sent to me by chat by accident by Hans, and his question is, I need to scroll back, how do you know that was implemented what you designed?
That's very good. It was one of the questions we asked in the source code review. Have we actually built what we promised to build? And another one, didn't we build any functionality that we shouldn't have built, in essence, backdoors? Because it's all a trust game. So, yeah.
Okay. We'll move on to the next question. Bluetooth is not suitable for distance measuring. Yep. What are your thoughts about that?
That's true. And what we did is we hired a military base with all military staff on it. And during a couple of days, some experts measured hundreds and hundreds of scenarios. So you have to imagine they built a subway, they built, or there were some housing. They looked at what does Bluetooth Low Energy do and doesn't it do, and we found that there are basically 3 circles. The first circle is what we call kissing range. That is 2 people within less than a meter. That is actually highly reliable. You can tell that somebody is within kissing range, or 2 phones are within kissing range. You need to be accurate here. If you've got a number of registrations and then a key comes by that matches, basically you get an alert. Actually, you get an alert even if you are close less than 15 minutes because the chance of infection is dramatically higher. Then you've got the more than 1 meter and less than 4 meters. And there you find that it is harder to say where somebody is. The more than 1 meter is still within infectious range, so it is good enough to say like, okay, there is a reason why you need to be careful. And you have to look also at the old-fashioned process. If you fall ill, they will ask you, where have you been for the last 14 days? And with which people were you seated for more than 15 minutes within 1.5 or 2 meters? That's the question they will pose to you. Try and go back 14 days in your mind and give me an accurate answer. And then ask yourself the question, what will be more accurate? Will that be the technology or the human mind? Now, what we found is that within 3 meters, the accuracy is actually 93%. So it is still a very good reason to give a warning. And bear in mind that the alternative is we don't warn people, we just go in lockdown.
Yes, so that's the alternative.
There is, but we have to, what you need to understand with COVID is there is no pretty answer to say like we can be as precise as a surgeon to carve out those people that need to go in quarantine. Unfortunately, infectious diseases don't work like that. So it is definitely fit for purpose, as you would say in the medical field with technology, to use Bluetooth for that. And then there's the last range, the more than 4 or 5 meters till the signal fades. And we ignore that because that is basically unusable. So that part is not being used. So when you get a warning, unfortunately, there is reason to be concerned. I'm not telling you that you will be sick or you will be infected, but the risk is increased. And you should actually follow the advice that the government gives you there if you really want to fight COVID. And if you look at the second wave in the Netherlands now, there is a very strong reason to follow up that advice because it lasts forever. And, I want to go back to the pub again and to the restaurant. I don't know about you guys.
That's a very fair point. Now, given the time, we have room for one more small question. So if at all possible, I'm going to pick a few because we have a lot of questions, right? So it's really hard to pick. People, if you don't have your question asked publicly, those are the breaks. We only have a limited amount of time. So we're just going to pick one.
I'm very easy to find so people can contact me if there are any other questions.
Excellent. So I'll just pick the one that I think you can be briefest on. From Fred, why did we invent the wheel through Corona Melder ourselves and didn't look at other apps already in use in other countries? Or did we, perhaps?
We did actually look at other countries. There was an appathon, but we found out of the 700 submissions that none of them proved to be interesting enough from a security perspective or could stand the criticism from a GDPR perspective. So there has been serious consideration of everything that was out there, and of course there were. And imagine what that means if you do such an appathon. I wasn't on board then, but the Dutch government had to inform other governments, like, okay, there will be something about your app in the media because a company submitted it to us and we found it to be insecure or privacy unfriendly. So that was kind of an interesting one. And there are, of course, other nations with other apps, but every country in Europe has a different process on how to deal with infectious diseases. So if the question is, should this have been a European effort, and should Europe, guide such a pandemic? My answer would be yes, of course. But the reality is it isn't, and that's what we have to deal with.
Outstanding. So, thank you so much for your time, Brenno. It's all been a last minute kind of thing. It's all been a challenge for everyone. You made it. It was awesome. Thank you so much. And I still owe you a dinner, by the way. I haven't forgotten. Once the restaurants open again, we'll definitely have to pick that up. Thank you again,
Thank you.